Okay, so what did I list? No? And again, this is from my own context. No? So my business is is a data company. So we're potentially analyzing information on behalf of other companies. And we are also in possession of a lot of information. And I'm sure if you put two and two together, eventually you'll run into some funny stuff. So the issues I've got on my list are more because of my context. So first, if you're a data provider, para kang it's like accountants and lawyers. There's this thing called aggravating circumstances. So if you're a lawyer and you committed a crime, double whammy ka because you're already a lawyer and you shouldn't be the one violating the law, no? And same with accountants and doctors, no? If you're a doctor and you're promoting, you could be sued for malpractice for promoting unhealthy practices, no? So how does that work for a data provider? Should you be doubly liable if you're in the business of data? The second, what if in your day-to-day work, lalo na in my case, you inadvertently spot something anomalous? Are you obligated to report it? No? An analogous issue here is, you know how it is in mga clinics or hospitals, right? When you have yourself subjected to medical tests, a laboratory will respond only to the request, no? CBC, platelets, urinalysis. But what if inadvertently you discover somebody is HIV positive, no? When you're a laboratory, but it wasn't requested. Are you obligated to report it? That's kind of a gray area, isn't it? So in the data world, ganyan din, no? Actually, very analogous siya kasi lab is also data. Or what if the third one is, it's someone you know, no? And while you're analyzing information, you find information that could potentially affect a loved one, a colleague, a friend. How do you then manage that? No? Do you tell that person and then violate their privacy? Or not tell that person and then that person gets some liabilities? It's a tough place to be. The fourth item is more about not necessarily just data, but how data is used. And usually the context is in the context of automation or efficiency. So what if that will potentially compromise the rights of some people? No? So, and this is classic, no? This is even before the data age, when people were adopting automation in factories, or like an anecdote here is, it was always a big deal before, no? When Excel was being introduced in an accounting department, because now the stuff that took 15 days or 2 months for an accountant to do manually with the columnar pad can now be done in a few minutes using Excel. So potentially you could reduce your accounting staff. So paano yun? No? How do you handle those losses or sentiment, no, from that activity? And incidentally, this is also one prevalent reason why the adoption of analytics is still in its infancy in this country. We prefer to just employ people with low wages rather than pay for the software, no? And hopefully that changes also. The other item is related to liabilities. Can you price any liabilities? Kasi same way when you're handling dangerous substances, or the same way you pay someone hazard pay for cleaning a building. If your data handling, can that be priced into a commercial agreement? Kasi I'm potentially exposed to all the stuff in that data set, no? And then finally, the last bit, analytics and data, and I learned this the hard way over the years, tends to be quite a political discussion. Why? Because information is always political. So when you're running a report, you will be in possession of information that could affect someone's performance, affect someone's compensation, or discredit somebody. But on the other hand, there's a moral hazard, no? If you're not transparent about it, and potentially the company will suffer. So what if your company is about to close down because of a report you see, no? Will you disclose it? Do people deserve to know? And yun, parang it's all of these are gray areas. So I've listed down potential mitigants. I don't know if they will cover it. The first one is always, disclosure is always your first defense, no? Just make sure everyone is aware. No? Okay, you're getting into this arrangement, you're getting into this relationship. Ito yun, para walang sisihan later na we kept anything at bay, no? But the downside there is you could potentially scare off people, scare your employees, scare your counterparties, scare your clients. Kesa naman ignorant, come in and then di mo sinabi, Doc. Second is related to that. It's good you guys are educating yourselves, but I think there'll come a point where you have to proactively educate everyone, no? Whether it's someone you deal with, it's someone in your company. Just so they know, no? Parang ano yan, orientation. Parang the fire hazard orientation in any company. The exits are there. Para just in case, no? Something burns, you know what to do. The third, I'm not sure how feasible, but is there such a thing as ethical screening? Kasi sometimes may ganun, no? When you employ people, you want to check, no? If will they make those decisions. But I think this is not being checked at the level of people handling data. We're more about their technical capabilities, we're more about their math skills, and maybe their data visualization. But no one actually ever tests, no? How will this guy react to a privacy issue or a moral issue? We should find a way of testing it at least. The fourth is documentation. Make sure we track performance. I mean, it's the analytical thing to do, but related to morale then, no? I mean, maybe HR should do this. If you're in the HR department, when you start implementing, let's say, a new bonus scheme or incentive scheme, it changes the behavior of people. People will game it, or it's related to the attitude towards sick leaves, for example. I know this being a former, manager of people. People in the Philippines think sick leave is a privilege. No? Uubusin mo yung sick leave mo, mandatory, magkakasakit ka. Whereas, or rather, it's a right pala. While abroad, sick leave is there so that you don't get sick. No? So if you feel unwell, you take a day off para you don't end up infecting everyone. Dito ang labo, either uubusin mo siya or you won't take it so that you can cash it later. So people would rather risk a pandemic just for the extra whatever 1,000 pesos you get. No? Data policy, I'm sure everyone's already writing that, but I think you just have to write it down, no, and cascade it. And then the last bit, I think it may be a new occupation, data insurance. I don't think it's ever existed before. But somehow you gotta find a way of pricing it in. Para lang you know na, pag may sumabog, at least I've got something to draw on. And I don't know if the likes of Prudential or Pioneer, all these non-life insurance companies, will come up with a liability thing, no? But potentially it could be a possibility of mitigating some losses.
Essentially, a value chain is essentially having an ingredient, no? An ingredient like your coffee bean. If you are a coffee lover, no, you would buy your beans from Coffee Bean or Starbucks, no? That is your raw ingredient. But your raw ingredient, if you love coffee, you cannot ingest the beans. So you would have to process it and store it somewhere, no? Then you would have to, once you have the ground beans, that's the only time when you can actually make a beverage out of it. You can liken the data value chain to that. No? So essentially, you have your data, no, in your respective work. That can be, your point of sale data. That can be your social media data, no? Data, no, which describes a phenomenon of interest. Now, that's what analytics is about. There is a phenomenon that you're interested in knowing. No? So you have data. You've quantified it. You've attached a number to that, or a category to that. Now, when you have your data, since it's raw, there's nothing much you can get from it. So you have to summarize it. No, to aggregate it, come up with measures from it, come up with segmentations from it. And then, depending on the problem that you're trying to address, you now select what type of analysis, no, you will do on the data that you have. Now, once you have done your analysis and you have gotten insights, insights are not useful until they are implemented, or not unless an actionable decision, no, can be derived from it. So that is the end-to-end process, no, of analytics. And you can liken it to an analytics life cycle. So it's not, you may hear from the data, some groups, you know, in the data science community, that there's a lot of focus on the algorithms, no, apply machine learning, you know, statistics versus machine learning, etc., etc. But there, without thinking that you have to be able to see, okay, if I will be using this type of algorithm or this technique, can this really address the problem I'm trying to solve? Or what data will this type of technique require? Will it be easily understood, no, by the decision makers? So analytics essentially is just transforming your raw data into information or into insights upon which a business decision can be based, no? So for analytics, just to, I guess, simplify it, no, simplify it further, you can associate that with the business questions, no, that you're asking. Are you just measuring, no, what's happening now? Are you just benchmarking? So that's what descriptive analytics is. Now, if you want to know, okay, given the current, the historical performance, what will happen in the future? No? That's what your predictive analytics is for. And then, when you're now trying to give options, no, to the decision maker, okay, given certain scenarios, what can I choose? What will be the optimum action, no? Given the different options. The best example I can think of for an end-to-end, or I guess a perfect example of analytics in action or in a product is Waze, no? Because it ingests a lot of data, no? Your GPS data, user data, location data, etc. And it is able to do descriptive, meaning you would know where you are, what's the traffic situation like, right? You can also know, you will also know what is the expected time of arrival, no? When you've put there your destination, right? And it can even give you options, no? Different routes to your destination, and what are the different ETAs, no? Probably normally you would choose the shortest, the shortest ETA, no, or the earliest ETA. But if you have a stop, no, at least you have that option given to you by the app. And at the same time, even if it has a lot of complex algorithms happening behind the scenes, you don't feel that it's complicated to use. No? You don't need a PhD, you don't even need a math degree to be able to use this data product. No? So for your businesses, I don't know what will be the counterpart for your respective functions. But if you will, I guess that will be the ideal product. No? Something that would maximize the value of the data. And at the same time, it would also have the rigor, no? The rigor of, the rigor of the different algorithms. But at the same time, it's not too complex. It's user-friendly. No? It's useful to the end user, no? So, just to give some examples, no? In finance, what are the different examples, no? of business analytics? For descriptive, you may be receiving, you may be producing financial results, no? Regulatory reports, as Mom said earlier. Now, if you have historical information, you may be interested to know what are the revenue trends, what are the loss trends, no? What can we expect the next year for operating plan, or in the next 5 years for strategic planning, no? And then project feasibility, no? If you are, if the company is planning to expand, no? So what are the different scenarios that the company can expect in, the next 5 years? And what are the outcomes, no? Based on the data, no? What are the simulated outcomes upon which the decision makers can base their actions, no? For human resources, you may be interested to know, okay, are my departments diverse? No, is there a bias, no, towards men or women, no, for certain departments? So that's what diversity analysis is. Now, you may be interested to know, okay, what is the attrition rate, no, employee attrition rate I'm expecting, no, the next year? Who are they? No, who are the employees likely to churn or attract, no, in the next year? And then employee engagement, no, based on I'm not sure if you heard of the employee lifetime value. That's the counterpart of the customer lifetime value. So based on the employee lifetime value, maybe you can come up with rewards, no, for your employees, no, to uplift engagement, no, etc. And then of course for marketing, no, probably you're just tracking, no, how are your sales promotions or your campaigns are performing. So that's just descriptive. Now, when you now try to optimize, no, your marketing mix, no, do attribution and be able to predict, no, what will be, how you will allocate the budget, no, across different channels, that's your predictive. And then recommendation engines. Say, for example, what is the next best action? The next best action for a customer, no? That's an example of recommendation engines. And then going back to the data value chain, I think it is important for us to know that in every stage of the data value chain, there is a role mainly responsible for them, no? So you may be in charge, you may be part of IT, right? Producing data or in charge of the different source systems, no? Data producer. You can be a data publisher. You're the one producing the different reports, no? Data consumer, no? You may be coming up with the different insights, no, from the reports that you produce. Or decision maker, you act upon the insights, no, or the actions recommended from the insights, no, that you've gathered. And why this is important is because, at least in my experience, I've seen that a number of analytics projects fail because of lack of collaboration across these functions, no? When in banking, normally when the project involves a source system or when it involves data, it's always driven or led by IT. But IT does not necessarily know what the data is for or what business problem is it trying to solve, no? So yeah, and then maybe the decision makers are not familiar with how difficult it is to get the data to answer the questions that they want, no? To answer the questions that they want. So, and also, it helps us, no, for those who are interested to or just starting in an analytics career, as you mentioned, no, would like this, not be able to contribute to your career in the future. This, in a way, helps you, map out, no, what your career path could look like. no? Depending, of course, on what your persuasions are or what your background is, you would probably be starting, say, for example, a consumer, because you're familiar with the maths of it and you like it. But probably at some point, it would be good to understand, okay, I'm doing all of these things. I would like to know the bigger picture. So how can I know all of these things? What exposure can I get? Or maybe, okay, I'm able to do, I know all these techniques, but I'm not familiar with the data that my company has. No? So you can work with your data team, or you can actually, cross skill, or actually do that work, if that interests you. So that's very important, that it's not only the data that's important, but also the people that supports the people that support each stage of the process. So, for many of you attended the first course, making data useful. We have tackled from database up to probably part of profiling, because you've done dashboarding, right? Day 2 of last time. So our focus now will be from profiling, the rest of profiling, up to automation. You've done part of automation also in dashboarding, but yeah, we will continue to do that as we tackle the techniques. So this is something I've already mentioned. So it's a process of transforming data into actionable insights, that drives business value. So algorithm, I know, as you mentioned earlier, your impression of algorithm is it's something intimidating, something that will injure you, or something that will give you headache. But essentially, an algorithmic problem solving is essentially transforming different human events, or different processes into points, into data points, so into observable, measurable points, na you can play around with. And it's important that there is a market need that you are trying to address, or a business goal, that should be guiding. What type of data will you be gathering? What type of analytics will you be doing? And kanina sabi ko, diba, yung 3 business questions. If benchmarking, you do descriptive. If you want to forecast, predictive. If you want to recommend, then prescriptive. And then, once you've identified what business goal you want to address, then now you gather the data into your analytics. Analytics or insights are not useful until you come up with your campaign, your strategy, put it into action so you can test it. Tama nga ba? Right? And then, we should be able to measure, what were the actions successful, or did it lift up the performance, And then from that measurement, you come up again with your new hypothesis, or your new business goal, because something else will need to be optimized, or will need to be addressed. Now, these are the common types of analytical techniques and the questions, that they answer. And we will be applying all of those. So, say for example, our interest is to know who is likely, or what is likely to happen, whether that is churn, whether that is a purchase, or response to a campaign. That type of problem is a classification problem. You want to categorize whether a customer will churn or not churn, will purchase or not purchase. There are binary outcomes. Now, when your interest is to know, so how does one factor affect my future performance? Now, that's what we call estimation or regression. No? Now, if our interest naman is to know, okay, what are the distinct homogeneous groupings of my products, of my customers, of my employees. Now, that type of problem is a segmentation problem. Now, if our interest is to know, okay, what events go together, what products go together so we can make, I don't know, we can propose product bundling, no, promos. That is what we call an association or an affinity analysis. And oftentimes, these 4 techniques would address probably 80 to 90% no, of the business problems. So once you're familiar with them. So just a quick test no, for you. No? What type of algorithm will you use? No? For the first one, which of my products should I bundle together? What type of problem is that? Association. Okay. What is the effect of my marketing spend on sales? Regression. Okay. Is my customer likely to be loyal? Classification, correct? How much should I spend on ads to increase my sales? Which of my leads should I sell to?
Segmentation.
Why segmentation?
Well, I guess once you're clear about certain groupings, then you have I guess a better idea of what products, services match.
You know the target market, okay. Does anyone have a different answer for which of my leads should I sell to?
Classification.
Why?
Kasi you can profile buy or not buy, and then once you have enough data to profile which will likely buy, then you can attack that profile. But I think yes, the segmentation is also perfectly.
Yeah, it's also applicable.
Or you might segment
Yeah.
with the segmentation, then there's a next step. Because the classify seems to be like an actionable.
Yeah, you already know with this person. Yeah. And then, what are the preferences of my Facebook followers? Yeah, segmentation. Mass classification, yeah, but yeah, as mentioned, no, the segmentation can also apply, no. So, which of my leads should I sell to? So, I think most of us have done one way or the other descriptive analysis. So essentially, part of what we've discussed last time, no, aggregating data, no, coming up with summaries, dashboarding, that's part of descriptive analysis. But we will not do that for this session, no? So what we'll focus on is more on data profiling and how can we use that, no, for use cases such as customer tagging, no? When we think of these things, we don't have to jump right away into the algorithm, especially if we're not familiar yet, no, with them, no. Even with a simple technique, we can already start optimization, no, of our campaigns. And then win-back analysis. I don't think I have the data here, but definitely segmentation. Now, how can we do segmentation with just doing descriptive analysis? No? So this is just a quick review of your statistics. No, don't be scared. No, essentially, it's descriptive statistics or descriptive analysis consists of 2 types. No, 2 types of analysis. Either you're coming up with your numerical summaries. Again, diba, sabi ko, there's a phenomenon, there's a problem, there's a phenomenon that you're interested in. You have to be able to quantify it. You have to be able to summarize your data. No, to at least describe that, no, that phenomenon. And then tabulation and visualization, which we will cover partly, but that should have been discussed already, no, in the last course. And here are just some examples of statistics or measures, no? Commonly used, no? Total, we always use aggregation, total revenue, total income, etc., etc. Ratios, financial ratios, liquidity ratios, no? Solvency ratios, delinquency ratios, so on and so forth. Now, measures of central tendency, no? Without being too complicated, no? Is essentially just measuring, okay, if you have a phenomenon that you're describing, there would be like one fair representative of that distribution of points, no? There's the one center. Yeah, center is it will fairly represent, no, the points that are too far or too close, no, to I guess to one event, you know. So that's essentially what central tendency represents. Variation. If we are interested in uncertainty, no, these are measures of variations are essentially just measures of how far, no, or close, no, our observations are between or among each other, no, and that gives us a measure of uncertainty, no, of that event, no, or likelihood of that event. Shape essentially is just describing, okay, are we observing more, I guess, extreme values, no? Or are we, say for example, are we seeing more observations falling or falling below a certain figure, maybe in terms of income, perhaps, no? Are there more employees, no, falling below, no, a certain benchmark, no, in terms of income, no? And then measures of position. Essentially, when we talk about position, it's just like, okay, at this point, no, parang exams, no, at mark, say for example, at mark 5, we are expecting that there are 20%, or I guess 80% above that, or 80% who are passing, perhaps. No? Yun yung percentile. There's a certain percent falling below or above, no, a certain point. Pag sinabing percentiles, it's in terms of hundreds. When you say the 50th percentile, so at what point will 50%, no, of my customers will fall, no, below that number, no? When you say quintiles, it's just like dividing your distribution into 5, no, balanced, no, equally distributed parts. Say for example, the first quintile means that there is 20%, no, 20% of your customers or your products falling below that quintile. Quartiles, similar concept, but divided into 4. No? And today we will be using part of mean, of course, and definitely percentiles, very relevant, especially for segmentation. So here are just some, we won't go through them in detail, but these are just some useful functions, no? If you want to do your usual descriptive measures, you would have used the sum ifs, average ifs in the dashboarding, no? Then the others you would be familiar with, the sum, of course, the average, etc. Then count. Okay, so first, focusing on profiling, no, or segmentation. When I would like to be, no, prescriptive, no. There are four types of segmentations, no, or slicers you can consider when you're doing your profiling. Either you have access to your customers' information or demographic information, so you have there a list, no, of possible demographic factors, no? Or maybe you want to profile based on psychographics, what their lifestyle is, no? Are they early adopters or late bloomers, yuppies, etc.? So that's an example of psychographic. Now, maybe you have access to transactions, no? So you want to know, okay, who among your customers are loyal, no? They frequent your store, or they frequently transact with you, or who among your customers are about to hibernate, no? They may be spending, they may have spent in large amounts and frequently before, but now their last transaction has been ages ago. So that's an example of a behavioral type of factor. Environment, that's where location will also fall, no? Environment. And other factors, no? Such as culture, business culture, etc. No? And different source systems or different data sources would house, no? These types of variables or factors. Now, so for our first demo, so what if we are interested to know, no, we're just doing profiling, who among our customers will likely to respond to our email campaign? No, this is a classification problem, no, based on sa natin kanina discussion earlier. But how can we do an optimization with just a descriptive type of analysis? So for this demo, we will work on the customer targeting worksheet. And the first sheet just describes or lists the fields and their labels, no? So we have here whether the customer responded or not, a unique ID, of course, and then some demographics and psychographic variables such as age, lifestyle, location, so zip code, civil status, so on and so forth. So, okay, what we can do, no, is let's create a pivot table, no, from this. So on the customer targeting, no, customer targeting worksheet, no, so highlight everything, no, highlight the entire table to the last record, no. Either you press for non-Mac Alt D PN, or you can go to Insert, then Pivot Table. Alt D PN is the shortcut, but you can go to Insert, then Pivot Table. Once you get to this point, no, just click Next. Then that will automatically point to the table that you highlighted, then click Next. Then let's just start with a new worksheet. So finish. Highlight everything, the entire table, insert pivot table. Yeah. So this will point to the table you highlighted. Click OK. Yeah. I'll delete this because I already. So essentially, I just output the pivot table in a new worksheet. Now, suppose we want to find out, okay, does civil status, no, influence your response rate? Or so what does my response rate look like across family status or civil status? No? Are single individuals more likely to respond than married ones? No? So essentially, basically, I just drag direct family status to rows. No? And then if we want to find out, so what is our response rate? No? Let's drag outcome to columns. Right? And then to count, no, the recipients, no, let's drag ID email hash to values. So For my table, it says here in the corner, no, upper left corner, count of ID email hash. Does anyone have here some? No? Okay, that's good. Because essentially, the email hash are just nominal, or they're just categories. No? We just want to count how many IDs, unique IDs are there. So we know, no, that among married recipients, 73 out of 260 responded. No? And among singles, 77 out of 240. Right? Now, could you drag again ID email hash to values? Right? So you should see something like this. Now, under columns, can you drag outcome below values? Huh? Again, when you insert, no, the email hash again to values, you should see a table that looks like this. Now, just move down the outcome, no, the outcome variable below values. So what you should see, you have here the count, no, of no response, and a replicate of that beside it. So why did I do that? No? Because we want to show the rates, no? We want to show the response rates. So if we want to convert it to the response rates, let's just right-click on any value, no, in this second, I guess, subtable, no? The count of ID email hash 2, right-click on any value under that. So right-click on any value, no, under this subtable, no, DE. Right-click, and then go to show value as, right? And then, how do we get the response rate, no? So we get the percentage to row total, no? Why percentage to row total? Because our columns are the outcomes. No? So you should see here the 100%. No? So now we know that given the email campaign that we launched, no, single people or single recipients are more likely to respond to our campaign. What if we want to know if among single, no, what type of lifestyle do they have? Then you can drill down further. So yun pala, among single, no, single recipients, those who are under the healthy lifestyle, no, responded more to your email campaign at 36. So if you want to be more targeted, no. So again, we just looked at, no, which segment is most responsive to our email campaign. Now we've considered the civil status, no, married, single, and found that the single sample, no, is more responsive, no, to our campaign. And if we drill down further, you know, those with healthy lifestyle or those within the healthy segment, no, they are the ones most responsive, no, if you look deeper. Now, we have numeric indicators, no, numeric demographics, no, in our data. So, what if we want to use them? So let's just remove this first, no? So we have age. If we drag age to your rows, since it's numeric, no, it will compute for every possible age in your data. So what if we want to come up with 5 equally sized equally sized meaning each age or each rather yeah, each age range would have more or less balance number of recipients or customers. No? So how can we do that? If we go back to customer targeting, right? No? So we have here age and monthly earnings as numeric demographics. So let's start with age. So we want to come up with 5 equally sized age ranges. No? So let's just label this age range. And then remember I mentioned that we will be using the location measures, percentiles, quintiles, quartiles, right? First, let's type match. We'll make use of the match function. So essentially what this does is to match a particular value to a set, or find that value from a set of or an array of values. So what we want to look at is, okay, age 62, to which quintile or quartile does that belong, or to which percentile does that belong? No? So let's type match, then C2, point to C2, then press F4 twice, or thrice rather, such that you are freezing the column. So again, match, open parenthesis, point to C2, then press F4 thrice, or thrice.
Function F4.
Function F4 depending on, or F4. Or just retain the dollar sign prior to the letter. So what that does, what the dollar sign does is to freeze.
Just pushes the row.
Yeah, it moves the row, but not the column. It will always refer to that column. $C2 is the value that we are gonna search, or we are gonna compare, with the quintiles. Now, if you want to find out, what are the quintiles? Again, quintiles essentially at the quintile, at the first quintile, we know that 20% of your observations or your data points fall below that number. Now, at the second quintile, 40% of your data points, observations, customers, products fall below that number, etc. So to get the quintiles, we make use of the function percentile, and then we get the percentile from this array, so from all the ages, in our database. So highlight everything under rec age, So again, match $C2, comma, percentile, open parenthesis, highlight everything under rec age, right? Press F4 once, yeah, comma. So essentially what the arguments or the inputs for percentile is what are the range of values from which you will obtain your quintiles or your percentiles. And then the next one is what percentile are you interested in? Is it the first dollar? If the F4 doesn't work, try function F4 for some laptops that works. Again, $C2. Yeah, $C2 percentile, C2 is the value we will look for in the range. Percentile, the inputs we need are the range of values from which we will compute or we will obtain, those points, the quintiles. So C2 to C501, press F4, because it will always get, the percentile, the quintile, the quartile from all the ages, in our database. No. Then the K here is just indicates which quintile, percentile, or quartile are you interested in. So again, for the first quintile, you know that 20% of the value, 20% of your customers' observations data points will fall below that number. We just list here 0, 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, and 0.8. Ibig sabihin, from this range, it will identify at what age, at what age will 20% of the recipients will fall, no? Pero we're looking at the lower bound, no? Greater than 0 up to 20%, 20% to 40%, yeah, range yan. Yeah? So the result of this percentile, no, function are ages, no? At what age can we expect that 20% of our recipients will fall under that value? At what age will 40%, no, of our recipients will fall under that value, etc. So essentially, no, once this percentile function, no, obtains the different quintiles, no, the match function will look for this value within the obtained, no, from the obtained quintiles. So just click. Later we will look at, so what are the ranges, no? We just know that we were dividing our age or our customers into 5 groups based on their age, and we want each group to be equally sized, no? And again, why are we interested for that to be equally sized? If we use that, when we use that in our response rate profiling, we want to make sure that each group or each age range would have enough sample, no, to base our analysis on. No? So those are just some principles why we're doing the equally sized groupings. No? So are you able to get 5 from, yeah? So this means that age 62 is within the higher range or the older range, no, of age in your database. No? That is the oldest segment. Parang ganon. So what you can do to apply the formula downwards, so just double click on the corner. You've learned this last time. Now, you already know that customer 2 or recipient 2 belongs to the second youngest segment. But what we're seeing here are just numbers, no? So we want to be able to match, no? We want to know, so what's the age range for group 5? What's the age range for group 2, and so on. So again, we do another pivot table, no, to know the values, no? So again, highlight the entire table, now including the new field, which is the age range. No? And then insert pivot table or Alt VPN for non-Mac users. Then let's just put the pivot table on the same worksheet, no, that we used earlier. So let's use existing worksheet, no, instead of the new worksheet, which is the default. And then let's go to sheet 1.
How do you choose the sheet 1? So existing worksheet.
Yeah. So when you click click existing worksheet, just click on the arrow. No? Then go to sheet 1. Then let's put the pivot table beside the table we used earlier. So on J3, you should see there the pivot table. So if we want to know, no, what are the lower and upper bounds of our age ranges, no, or age groups, so let's drag age range, no, to rows. Okay. Then once you have the pivot table, just drag the age group or the age range to your rows, right? And then drag rec age to values. No? And do it twice. No? Same as what we've done in the earlier pivot table. So you should see here, now the default summary is sum. No? But we're interested to know what is the minimum age and the maximum age, no? For each age range. So just right click on any value within the table, then summarize values by, then choose minimum for the first column, no? And then for the second column, choose maximum. Right. So now, so now we know that, no, for our first group, no, the age range is from 15 to 24 years old, so on and so forth. Then your oldest group is from 58 to 69. So when I say equally sized, I don't mean equally sized yung interval between the ages. It's more equally sized, meaning the distribution of your data points, your recipients, customers across the ranges are more or less balanced or equal. So this is more for presentation so that when you create your profiling, no, you would already see your range, your age range rather than the numerical indicator, no, for your age groups. So let's just create a label here beside the age range pivot, no? So label. Then let's type equals K4 ampersand quotation marks, no? Dash, space dash, space. Ampersand, then L4.
Space dash space code.
Yeah. Then ampersand L4. So your ampersand, what that does is to concatenate your characters, no? So what it will look like, no, when you press enter is that, no, 15 to 24. If you want to prettify it further, you can include, no, after L4, ampersand, quote, space Y dot O dot, close quote. Okay? So now we know, now we have equally sized age groups, we know the minimum and maximum age across each age group, and then we've created a label. And we want to use the label, we want to use the label for our profiling. So let's go back to customer tagging, or customer targeting rather. Then on the rightmost side, beside age range, no, let's just type age range label. So we want to make sure that for each age range, no, beside it, we have the label for that group. No? So again, we use, we can use VLOOKUP or we can use index. No? Index is similar to your match function. No? So to demonstrate, no, just type index. No? Right? Index. So for the inputs, you would need to know the array, no, from which you will obtain the value that you want to get. No? In this case, no, we want to get the label. No? We want to get the range of cells for the labels. No? So we go again, no, to sheet 1. No? After you've typed, okay, equals index, no, and then the array, so just highlight everything under label. Right? Press F4 because it will always look up, no, to to those cells, no? Then comma. Then we want to know the row number, no, that we will pick up, no? So essentially, what we need to do is we want to know what is the row of the value 5 in this table. Where can you find the age group 5 from this table, no? So it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's the 5th, right? But to automate it, no, so you can either put there 5, no, or you can use the match function, no, that we've used earlier. So we want to look for age group 5, no? We want to look for age group 5. Yeah? Press F4 twice or just freeze the column, right? Comma. And where will you search the age range 5, no? From the reference table that we've created, no? From this. So you will search for the number 5 from this column. Huh? F4. Just type 0 to get the exact match. Then close parenthesis twice.
Function for twice.
Yeah. Okay, let me
Range of 1 to 5.
Let me just enlarge this one. Yan. So essentially, index will look from these cells, no, M4 to M8, which contain the labels, no, the age range, no, or the label for the age group 5. No. So from here, no, you will need to know which row on which row will you find number 5. You can either just type 5, no, just type 5. It's simpler. Or if you want to automate the process, no, just use match. You'll search for 5 on the table on sheet 1, right? And then just put 0 to get the exact match. So when you click enter, you should have there, no, it picked up 58 to 69, no? 58 to 69, no? From the 5th row. And the match function knew that is in the 5th row, no? Because we searched the value 5, no, from these set of values. No?
Can you explain again
The formula.
the label formula?
Okay. This one or?
The label. Sorry.
So again, index picks up from these cells, no, the label for the age group 5. And how it does that is to look for the age range or the age group 5 from our table on sheet 1. And get a little bit used to this, no? So the painful part is always the first cell. Then you can just double click on the corner to apply everything. That's how we'll do it in our succeeding learning activities. So what it does is just to concatenate the value 15 with space dash space, and then also the maximum age for that group, and then space wide dot o dot. So ampersand just concatenates, no, strings. So once you've been able to get this value, just double click on the corner and it should apply to the rest of the records. So once you've done that, you should already see the age range label, no, from your field list. So just drag that to rows. Now you see that when I mentioned equally sized, no, more or less, no, the values are within 100 level, within the 100 level, no? And then compared to the response rate profile that we looked at earlier, we can see, I guess, a greater discrimination, no, of response across age, particularly the older segment. And it's also worth having a look because, again, the distribution is balanced, no? It has enough evidence there, no? We have enough evidence in that segment. So you go back to sheet 1, no? So if you haven't gotten to this point, just go to the first pivot table, no? Click on any value within that table, then go to Analyze under Pivot Tools. Analyze, then change data source. So again, just click on any part of that, change data source, then highlight the entire table, including the newly created fields. So now this looks more interesting, no? Kasi we can see, oh, there is a segment that responds almost surely. No, 85% of the time they respond to the campaign. 58 to 69. Kanina we've looked at single. So let's try to include that, no, as a sub-segment to this. No? Remember earlier we noted that single recipients are more responsive to the campaign. Old single people. The old single people. No? Old single people. No? 91%. Now if you want to hide, no, the subcategories, just right click on the row labels, or right click, then you should see there expand collapse. So just choose expand collapse, then collapse entire field. So you should be back here, just expand the portion you're interested in. So if you have included subsegments, you should have something like this. No, would have looked like this. If you want to hide the subsegments, right click on the topmost level, no, the 15 to 24, right click on that. Click expand collapse, then collapse entire field. So you should be back to this profiling. No? We know that most responsive segment is the older segment. So we drill down further. We learned earlier that single recipients are more responsive. So let's cross tabulate that with the oldest segment. No? So it's the single old. So given that this is the profile, no, of the recipients who responded, no, to your campaign, maybe you want to come up with in your next test, no, a campaign applicable to that segment. So for this exercise, we've applied aggregation, no, customer profiling, no, getting the ratios across different segments. We've also learned about percentiles, no, location measures, no, and how we can equally distribute data points across those segments, no, and then use the new segmentation for our profiling. So this is just a simple way, no, that you can do your customer targeting. No? In your CRM, that falls under your customer acquisition stage. No? I think that's worth mentioning because I know some of you attended for the CRM aspect. So there's no excuse, no, for as long as you have data, there's no excuse not to be able to come up with something. Again, to get to this table, no, just right-click on any cell. Then let's remove first everything, no. So we've created our age group, no. So just drag. Before you do that, TJ, just click first on any cell. No? Then you should see the option Pivot Tools Analyze. So just click on Analyze. Then you'll find there Change Data Source. Click on that. No? So under Table Range, click the arrow, no, and highlight everything, including the newly created fields. No? So you should have there customer targeting, exclamation, $A, $1, colon, $K, $501.
$K.
$K, $501. Yeah. Or just highlight everything, no? The entire table. Then click the arrow again, then click OK. So you should be back to your table, no? Pivot table. Then you should already see the age range label. No? Compared to the profiling that we've done earlier, no? We can see, I guess, a more discriminating set of response rates, no, across the ages. And as mentioned, no, more or less, no, the value, the distribution of data points or the recipients across the segments are more or less balanced. So you can use this as a basis for your next experiment or next target. Okay, so now we've learned how to do a simple targeting, no? It's a simple. Well, if you will not be the one to actually do it, at least you know what to ask from your team. No? And it's not only limited to response. It could be for in a banking context, which segments are likely to be approved. So you just target those, no? Instead of wasting, resources, right? FTE efforts, right? So we now go to another exciting type of segmentation. Now, earlier we used demographic, psychographic segmentation. Now we're gonna do behavioral segmentation. And that's why I practiced you in coming up with the quintiles, no? The quintiles, quartiles, etc. Because now with an RFM segmentation, type of segmentation, you will be dealing with most or all or entirely numeric, no, indicators, no. Your recency would be when was the last transaction, months since last transaction, weeks, days since last transaction, last contact, etc., etc. Your frequency, how often does your customer transact with you? How often do they contact you? Or what is the quantity, no? Quantity of transaction, per transaction. That's frequency. Monetary would be the size of the transaction, whether it's average or in total, no? So what we've done for the age earlier, we'll be doing thrice in RFM segmentation. So this is what I've mentioned earlier, what recency, frequency, and monetary means. And RFM segmentation is something that's good to examine because we can determine from the transactions which are the clients who are our best customers. They always transact, they transact big, no? And they transacted recently, right? Or they transacted short time in between, they have short time in between transactions, right? So you would want that segment, or you want to take care of that segment, no? And just to, I guess, paint a better picture, no? So by the way, no, for the RFM segmentation, the principle being followed is the Pareto, no? So for 20% of the effort, no, you get 80% of the value. Pareto principle. So this is just a sample mapping, no, of your RFM segmentations, no? So, for example, you have customers who just bought recently, and they always transact with you, and they spend in big amounts. So these would be your champions. And an actionable tip for that would be to reward them, of course, because you know that they are your champion, your best customers. No? So if, for example, you have customers who are have below average recency, frequency, monetary values, you feel that they're about to sleep or about to be inactive, what will you do, no? Share valuable resources, recommend, no? Cross-sell to them, no? What's the next best action, no, to them to increase their transaction or to keep them as customers, no? And so on. So for this, no, we will use the RFM segmentation worksheet, right? So let me just go through quickly, no, the RFM segment description. So remember earlier we've done the quintiles, right? So each of these RFM segments are consist, no, of several R scores, F scores, M scores, and RFM scores, no? So here, your 1 would be the lowest, rather the one who transacted long time ago, no? 1 would be least frequent, no? And then M would be the lowest ticket, no? And then RFM is just a combination of your R, F, and M. This is just a subset of what your, I guess, POS or e-commerce database, no, data would look like. You would have there your customer number or your invoice number, customer number. Then you have there your transaction date, right? And then you know there the size, no? What's the total sales, no? Or order size of your customers. So first, no, for column E, let's get the, okay, let's just move it here, H, no? Let's get the recency score or the recency quintile or recency grouping. Yeah. So again, recency means when was, how many months or how many weeks since the last transaction, no, of the customer. So to know that, no, let's just say, for example, no, let's use filter, no, to use for, if you want to know when was the oldest transaction date and the latest transaction date of a customer, you can go to, where's filter? You can go to data, no? Click on any part of the table, then click filter, no? Then under customer, no, there's an arrow there. Let's just choose any random. Let's just choose one conveniently, no? So we can see here, no, that the customer, the oldest transaction is in 2002. No. By the way, for this one, the format of the date is DDMMYYY, just so that you won't get confused.